you can find it. And so let's just do that, Jay. Can you go to D2L quick? Go to the Dropbox. We'll download that. What's that?
Where is that?
It should be on the in the drop. It should be under resources, under the R resources. So content, R statistics, and then it's this file. You won't see the .csv, I guess. It's just HW3. But when you download it, it will download as a .csv file. And so Jay is going to download that to his desktop so he knows where it's at. So that's the first thing you need to do. And then once you have that file on your computer, we need to import it into R. And RStudio makes that easy. There is a icon over here that says import dataset. And if you click on that dataset, and we want to import a local file, and then you're going to find the CSV file that you just downloaded, and you're going to say open, and then it's going to come up with this little dialog box that's going to essentially ask you, is this how you want me to import this data? And in our case, everything looks good. The only thing you want to do is where it says na.strings, just make that a blank instead of the word na. So what comes up by default, it will have the word na there. You want to make that na.strings just a blank. And then you have to make sure that you have the headers here for these 4 variables that we want to work with. So, questions?
Yeah, I couldn't find it import.
So he just import. So it's under the environment. There's it should say import document, or I'm sorry, import data set. And you want to import a text file. And so
after we have the imported data,
we're stopping right there for right now. Okay. You have it imported? Oh, you're good. So just give me that NA.
That's one thing to change the NA on that one, the little box pops up.
What's that? All right, and so we just downloaded this data set into RStudio, and that's the data set you need to use to do homework number 3. So anybody not have that imported? Anybody else not have that imported? There should be 985. Actually, Control L. So, you already downloaded it. You done it?
Did you?
And down to the home.
So you get that.
I don't know how to do it on the Mac, because it's a business where it's, I don't know how to do it. Mine.
Hey, where's my So where's my
And then go to the download, onboard.
All right, anybody else not have?
I don't know. What should I just change there? You can. I mean, you can just kind of get used to what you have. I don't know how to run it, but to run it. So, you haven't opened a file yet? It's showing you a preview of what you see, what you have in this data file. What you have in the file. I have a Mac. I can't do anything but a Mac. File. I could just. But should I go?
All right, so we need to look at this homework sheet that I gave you because the data file has 4 different variables in it. And the first variable, and so there's 985 people that answered this survey. And we know that because it says 900, it should say 985 OBS observations. So there's 985 observations. There's other ways for us to find that. But there's 985 observations for 4 variables. And so we're working with, one R object that's called HW3. So everybody should have that object in their workspace called HW3. That's the object we're going to be working with. And that object is, again, 985 people who gave us a response on 4 different variables. And those 4 different variables are listed on the homework sheet. The first one, we ask people how much they trust the media, and the scores could range from none of the time to just about always. We also ask people how old they were. We ask people levels of education. And then finally, we ask people if they're more optimistic or pessimistic about the future of the country, okay? We're not typing anything right now. We're just looking at this sheet. Right now, we're just looking at this sheet to understand the variables that we're working with. And the variables that we're working with, there's 4 different variables there. And those 4 variables are the variables that I just went through. How much they trust the media, their age, their level of education, and whether they're pessimistic or more optimistic about the future of the country. And so what I want you to do is for those 4 variables, calculate the mean, the median, and the mode. Obviously, you don't have to do that by hand. We can have the computer do it for us. The range and the standard deviation. Obviously, we're not going to do that by hand. We're going to have the computer do that for us. And so that's the purpose of what I want to show you is how do we get our statistics to calculate those statistics for us. And remember that we're working with a single object called HW3, and that object has 4 variables. So it's a little bit different than the other objects we've worked with. When we created a variable in the past called x, and we assigned x the values 1, 2, 3, for example, we had one object that had those 3 values. In this case, we have one object called HW3, where HW3 is made up of 985 observations for 4 variables. Questions?
Yeah, it won't let me type like anywhere with a chart, like with a chart. Like I can't type in HW3.
You should be in a R script file. So if you open up an R script file, do File, R script, you should be able to type in that.
So we got 2 tabs.
What's that?
2 tabs.
Strings, factors, leave that check.
You might have 2 tabs.
Leave a check.
Oh, that's all.
Okay, just make sure any strings is.
The header one is yes, but it should be by default.
Yeah, it was.
I don't think it used to be. I think it used to be not. But then everybody used that. So
So here I can open up an R script.
yeah, so this is just you know preview. Okay. So then you open up on our scripts. You guys.
Thanks.
What about the chart? The chart that you sold me. It's already on there. Like, oh, you got no listen down.
He's gonna show us how to do.
Go get one down. Get it?
Yeah, it looked like that. It looked like that. Oh, okay. Just say that. All right. That's okay. No. I'll be sure.
You're good? Got it?
What I was trying to tell you was he hasn't told us yet. Like, he asked me to ask her.
Hey, where's the hat, bro? It's National Selfie Day.
Man is gonna fix it. We'll for sure fix it on a break. Let's just continue to work through this. Yeah, some of you might not be. Some of you might not be. Some of you, but if you follow along, you'll easily be able to get caught up. So on the back side of that sheet. I give you some commands, and these are some useful commands that we're going to go through. then after we do those commands, I give you the commands that we need to use to calculate the things we need to calculate for this homework. So the first command is the word names. And so if we do names, and then the name of the object, in this case HW3, and then execute that command, what would you expect that it would give us? It's going to give us the names of the variables that are in that object. And in this case, it's those 4 variables that we worked with. So you should just be able to type names in the R script, and then you execute that, and it's going to, in the console, give you the names of the variables in your data set. The next command is str, and str is abbreviation for structure. And if we do str, the name of the object, and execute that, it gives us a bit more information about the data set that we're working with. In this case, we get the names of the variables, our 4 variables, and it gives us the how many observations we have. And then it tells us what kind of data each of those 4 are. INT, just an abbreviation for integer. And so it could be any number of types of data. In this case, all 4 of these are integers. And so we have that as well. The next command, there's actually 2 commands that we use quite a bit. One's called head and the other one's called tail. And if we do head with the name of the data frame that we're working with, it just gives us the first 6 rows of data, so you can get a sense of what's the data that I'm working with. And then the tail would be the last 6 rows of the data. And so we can get, again, as you work with data, sometimes it's useful to see the structure of the data. You just want to get a sense of what data that you're working with. So those are 4 useful commands: names, structure, str, head, and tail, okay? So now I want to work through how we calculate the mode, mean, median, range, and standard deviation. But before I can do that, we need to do one thing. And one of the things that makes R such a powerful statistical tool is a lot of people develop tools that we can use to do our whatever we want to do with R, and we call those libraries. And so what we need to do is we need to install a new library that allows us to calculate the mode. There's a number of libraries that do that, but the one I want you to install, and if Jay clicks the word install, it comes up with a dialog box. And the library that we want to install is just called pretty R. Lowercase pretty R.
Yeah, I don't have that. It's under packages, you click on packages. Oh, okay. Nice.
And so, and then if you click install, it's going to run. Yeah, it's on the assignment sheet. Lowercase pretty, uppercase word R. So it's ready to install, and you see it run what it code that looks like what they have in this screen.
It's different. Like when we have like the arms and that.
Okay.
You know the big constitution.
So the next command, when we install these other packages into R doesn't by default have you. By default, it's not loaded into the working environment. So you need to do library pretty R, and that will load that library into your working environment.
That's just.
No, you don't have to, that's just Jay's note, right? You just have to type library, pretty R. There are other ways to do that where you don't have to type if you don't want to, but the easiest way for us to do it is just to type the word library, pretty R. And then you should just see, make sure you don't get an error message over here.
Yeah, I. The first time.
And so that library called pretty R is the thing that allows us to calculate the mode. By default, R statistics doesn't have a function to calculate mode, but somebody else wrote a function for us, and we're just going to use their function to calculate mode for us. And so the command to calculate mode, and I'm just going down the sheet of commands we have here, is capital. Remember, R is case sensitive. It's capital MODE. And then the thing we need to do is the very bottom of the homework sheet. I tell you how we reference variables in a data frame. This object that we're working with is called a data frame. The way we reference those is we first name the data frame, in our case HW3, then we put a $sign, and then we reference the variable that we want to work with. And RStudio is helpful enough that it actually lists your variables for you. But if it didn't list them, you could just type one of those variable names out. And in our case, we're going to start with Trust Media. And so you can just click on that, and we get the line of code you need to have is HW3 $sign. The HW3 is the name of the data frame. Then $signs, because that $sign, because that tells R that you want to reference a specific column within that object, and that column that we want to start with is Trust Media. Then if you execute that line of code, it's going to give us what the modal value is, and you should get 3. Got it? And so those of you that got 3, you can start doing these other ones. My guess is you'll be able to figure out how to calculate the mean, median, range, and the standard deviation. I would do, if I were doing this, I would do all of the Trust Media ones first, and then do all of the age ones, and then do all of the education ones. Instead of doing all of the modes first, medians first, and averages Got it?
He's saying you should do all
So
of
once
them.
you do like all of those for Trust Media, you can move on to the other.
You can move on to the others, that's right.
Oh, it's me.
Yeah, he's doing all of them for Trust Media first, so we just need to go something.
What about for that? That's just like showing how you type in like the kind of thing,
I think you type uppercase instead of lowercase. So the commands are listed on the back side of that sheet, and they're case sensitive, so remember that as you're doing these.
Okay, so
What's that?
We're gonna keep going. We stop the video.
You can stop it.